The idea of establishing a BRICS-wide currency has been circulating among member states for years. However, as the consortium expands and faces increasing financial pressures, discussions surrounding the creation of a joint BRICS currency have gained significant momentum. At the BRICS Summit in Kazan, the official BRICS website released several images depicting a symbolic banknote being handed to Russia's president, who is currently chairing the group. These images have sparked speculation about the future of a unified BRICS currency, possibly a unique BRICS note, or even the adoption of a shared medium aimed at reducing dependence on the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. This growing drive within BRICS nations to create a new payment system and currency has raised considerable concerns in the United States. The initiative directly challenges the US dollar's long-standing role as the dominant global reserve currency, a cornerstone of American economic influence. Washington views the potential creation of an alternative BRICS currency as a threat to its control over international trade and financial systems. Such a development could diminish the dollar's role in global transactions, undermine its status as a reserve asset, and weaken the United States' ability to leverage its currency in imposing sanctions or advancing foreign policy objectives. In response to this movement, Donald Trump issued a stark warning to BRICS nations, stressing that any efforts to create a new currency or support alternatives to the dollar would come with severe consequences. On November 30, 2024, Trump threatened to impose 100% tariffs on exports from countries backing such initiatives. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor support any alternative to the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs and lose access to the invaluable US market, Trump declared. This aggressive stance highlights the US's deep concern over the geopolitical implications of dollarization. A successful BRICS currency could shift global economic power away from the United States, leading to a more fragmented financial landscape where Washington's influence is greatly reduced. However, Trump's threats may inadvertently escalate tensions and accelerate the BRICS nations' push for greater financial independence, potentially reshaping the global economic order and challenging American supremacy. Before examining the potential impact of the BRICS banknote and its broader consequences, it's important to understand why these member nations are pursuing alternatives to the dollar. Both financial and political factors are driving this push, as countries seek to shield themselves from dollar-related uncertainties, strengthen internal trade ties, and gain greater control over their monetary policies in an increasingly diversified. The US dollar's position as the world's primary reserve currency dates back to the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference. Delegates from 44 allied nations met to establish a stable international monetary system after World War II. The conference resulted in the creation of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, now part of the World Bank. A central feature of the Bretton Woods system was the establishment of fixed exchange rates, where currencies were pegged to the US dollar, which was then convertible to gold at a rate of $35 per ounce. This arrangement effectively positioned the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, facilitating international trade and investment. The dollar's dominance was further solidified by the United States' economic strength after the war. With a strong economy and the majority of the world's gold reserves, the US dollar became the preferred medium for international transactions. In the 1950s, the US dollar strengthened significantly, driven by a combination of global economic factors and domestic stability. During this period, the dollar benefited from a booming global trade environment, along with the strong economic performance of the United States, which helped establish the dollar as a preferred reserve currency. This trend continued to gain momentum in 1958 with the full operation of the Bretton Woods system, which enabled nations to settle international transactions in US dollars, reinforcing its role in the global economy. However, the Bretton Woods framework began to face significant challenges by the 1960s. Rising US deficits and an increasing drain on gold reserves put substantial pressure on the system. Gold reserves, which had traditionally backed the dollar, were weakening, and inflation was rising within the US economy. These issues heightened stress on the global financial system, making it increasingly clear that the Bretton Woods model was no longer sustainable. In 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility into gold, effectively ushering in the era of fiat currencies and floating exchange rates. Despite these significant changes, the global reliance on the US dollar remained intact, primarily due to its entrenched role in international trade and finance. The dollar continued to dominate global transactions and acted as a safe haven currency during periods of economic uncertainty. However, in recent years, evolving geopolitical dynamics have prompted countries, particularly in the BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, to rethink the dominance of the US dollar in global trade. These nations are increasingly exploring alternatives to reduce their dependency on the dollar, driven by economic strategies, shifting global power balances, and the desire to mitigate the effects of US-led sanctions. The BRICS countries, in particular, have been steadily increasing their global economic influence. By 2023, the BRICS nations accounted for approximately 32% of global GDP, as measured by purchasing power parity, PPP, surpassing the share of the G7 nations, which stood at 30%. This trend is expected to continue, with projections suggesting that the BRICS' share could rise to 45% by 2040. On top of this, the BRICS nations represent around 41% of the global population, highlighting their significant demographic advantage. Their combined economic and human resource base has further bolstered their influence in global trade and finance. This growing prominence has led to various initiatives aimed at reducing dependence on the US dollar, a process often referred to as de-dollarization. One noteworthy development is the agreement between China and Brazil to trade in their respective local currencies, the Chinese yuan, CNY, and the Brazilian real, BRL, bypassing the US dollar entirely. This agreement is designed to reduce transaction costs and minimize currency exchange risks, facilitating smoother and more cost-effective trade between the two nations. The first transaction under this arrangement took place in August 2023, involving the export of pulp from Brazil to China, with the deal being financed and settled in yuan, which was then converted directly into Brazilian reals. The idea of a shared BRICS currency has gained traction as a potential solution to streamline cross-border exchanges and promote economic autonomy. Such a currency would align with the ongoing trends of de-dollarization in the BRICS bloc, and could be backed by the combined economic strength of the member nations. This vision could manifest in several forms, from a singular currency to a digital currency linked to each nation's economic share, similar to the International Monetary Fund's special drawing rights, SDR. Various bilateral arrangements already in place, such as those between China and Russia, Brazil and China, and India and Russia, signal the increasing willingness of BRICS countries to engage in transactions in local currencies rather than relying on the US dollar. A key point of debate surrounding the potential BRICS currency is whether it should be gold-backed. Proponents of a gold-backed currency argue that it would provide a stable and trusted foundation, reducing the reliance on fiat currencies like the US dollar. They believe that anchoring the currency to gold could enhance investor confidence, mitigate inflationary risks, and offer a hedge against currency volatility, which could be especially beneficial for emerging economies. On the other hand, critics warn that such a rigid system could limit the flexibility needed to respond to economic shocks or fluctuating trade balances. Additionally, tying a currency to a single asset like gold could expose the BRICS currency to significant risks if gold prices experience substantial volatility. As an alternative, some economists propose a diversified asset-backed currency, which could be supported by a mix of commodities or even a basket of currencies from the BRICS nations themselves. This approach could offer more flexibility while still providing stability, as it would not be reliant on the performance of a single commodity or asset class. Moreover, others argue that the BRICS currency could be completely unpegged and freely floating, allowing member nations to adjust their monetary policies independently, in line with their unique economic conditions. Ultimately, the rise of BRICS economic influence and the ongoing shift toward de-dollarization highlight the changing dynamics of global finance. While the US dollar remains the dominant global currency, the efforts of BRICS nations to explore alternatives demonstrate a growing desire for a more diversified and multipolar financial system. Whether through local currency trade agreements, the development of a shared BRICS currency, or debates over asset-backed alternatives, these efforts could pave the way for a new era in international trade and finance, reducing the world's reliance on the US dollar and potentially reshaping the global economic order. Let's take a moment to pause and reflect. Before we dive into today's content, we'd like to ask for a quick favor. If you're enjoying the insights and analysis we provide, please consider hitting the like button. It only takes a second, but it helps us immensely in reaching more viewers who might benefit from the information we share. And if you have thoughts or feedback on the topic, we encourage you to leave a comment below. Your engagement is invaluable, as it helps us grow and refine our content to serve you better. Now let's talk about a topic that's shaping the future of global finance: strategic independence from dollar-based institutions, the rise of BRICS, and its push for financial autonomy. As the world moves toward greater economic multipolarity, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are focusing on enhancing their strategic independence from the US-dominated global financial system. One of their primary aims is to reduce reliance on the US dollar, which has long been the cornerstone of international trade and finance. These nations believe that the global financial institutions, like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, tend to favor Western interests, which can undermine the sovereignty and autonomy of non-Western countries. A heavy dependence on the dollar makes economies vulnerable to the geopolitical moves and economic policies of the United States, such as sanctions or financial restrictions, which have been particularly evident in recent years. A key example of this was Russia's exclusion from the SWIFT banking system and the subsequent sanctions tied to the Ukraine crisis. This disruption underscored the vulnerability that many countries face when they are tied to the US dollar and US-centric financial networks. What BRICS is doing to counter dollar dependence. In response, BRICS members have been exploring ways to circumvent these dollar-based institutions by fostering alternative financial arrangements. One strategy is to encourage the use of local currencies in trade between member countries. By conducting intra-BRICS trade using their own currencies, or even creating a shared BRICS currency, these nations aim to strengthen their economic sovereignty and reduce their exposure to external pressures. For instance, the idea of a unified BRICS currency is being actively discussed. If implemented, it could significantly streamline transactions within the bloc, reducing the costs and risks associated with currency conversion. A common currency would also help in avoiding reliance on the US dollar, simplifying trade processes, and enhancing deeper economic integration. This approach could also serve as a shield against external currency fluctuations, providing greater resilience as intra-BRICS trade continues to grow. The practical benefits of dollar-free settlements are already becoming evident in bilateral agreements between countries like China and Russia, as well as India and Russia. These agreements demonstrate how local currency settlements can lower transaction costs, protect against exchange rate volatility, and speed up deal finalization. For example, Russia and China have increasingly traded energy and commodities in rubles and yuan, reducing their reliance on the dollar amid rising geopolitical tensions. Similarly, India has explored rupee-based trade mechanisms with Russia to facilitate the import of oil and other goods, further reinforcing the shift away from dollar-centric trade. The potential impact of a BRICS currency. A unified BRICS currency, if implemented, would offer even more advantages. It could provide a single medium of exchange that is tailored to the collective economic priorities of member states. This would reduce the vulnerability of BRICS countries to sanctions, financial disruptions, and the volatility often associated with the dollar-dominated global financial system. However, the transition to such a currency or the increased use of local currencies for intra-BRICS trade would require the development of robust financial infrastructure and strong trust among member nations. Furthermore, mechanisms would need to be in place to address trade imbalances and ensure the stability of this new financial order. The shift away from dollar dependence also signals a broader move toward a multipolar financial system, which would help emerging economies strengthen their voices in global economic affairs. BRICS advocates argue that this change is essential for ensuring a more equitable global financial order, one that does not disproportionately favor the West, particularly the United States. Why this matters for emerging markets. For many emerging markets, the dominance of the US dollar poses a serious challenge. The dollar's primacy grants Washington significant leverage over global markets and financial policies, making countries dependent on it vulnerable to the whims of US domestic policy decisions. For example, when the US Federal Reserve adjusts interest rates, it can have widespread consequences for economies around the world, increasing the cost of debt and leading to inflationary pressures. By reducing their reliance on the dollar, BRICS countries aim to shield themselves from these external risks and create a more stable financial environment within their own regions. The idea is to foster greater financial stability by diversifying away from dollar dependence, which would help stabilize their economies and reduce exposure to global financial shocks. BRICS, commemorative banknote, a symbol of unity. Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about a symbol of BRICS' vision for the future, the commemorative BRICS banknote. Ahead of the 2023 BRICS Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, 1,000 commemorative 100 BRICS banknotes were printed in Kirak, a town in Russia's Vladimir region. These notes were designed not as actual currency but as symbolic representations of BRICS unity. During a summit in Kazan, President Vladimir Putin received one of these special bills, which Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov described as quasi-money, emphasizing its symbolic role rather than its function as an official currency. The design of the banknote features emblems and flags of the BRICS countries, showcasing Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa on the front. On the reverse side, the flags and names of additional BRICS-associated countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE are also displayed, signifying the expansion and growing influence of the BRICS alliance. The banknote was the brainchild of Yevhen Fyodorov, the head of Chirac Typography JSC, and it was created as a token of support for the BRICS objectives, which include fostering multinational cooperation and promoting a multipolar global order. The circular arrangement of flags on the front side of the note represents the principle of equal standing among BRICS members. Fyodorov regards this note as both a conceptual prototype and an emblem of the shifting global landscape, one where grand transformations often begin symbolically. The note's design also incorporates advanced security features similar to those found in Russian currency, highlighting the seriousness with which BRICS is approaching the future of its financial framework. The path ahead. While a shared BRICS currency remains a topic of active discussion, President Putin has clarified that there are no immediate plans for its implementation. The transition to such a currency would require careful deliberation and extensive planning. BRICS is focused on strengthening cooperation and laying the groundwork for a more balanced global financial order, but these changes will take time. Conclusion: a step toward a new global financial landscape. As we wrap up, we want to thank you for watching this video. We truly appreciate your time and attention. If you found our content insightful or thought-provoking, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue producing content that matters. We encourage you to stay connected with our community by watching more of our videos, which you can find right here on the screen. Your engagement keeps us going, and we look forward to sharing more with you soon. Thank you.